2, 1.
Welcome to Made for More Living.
One small step for man.
With Johnny Jennings.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
The fastest and most exciting hour of news, events, and real estate in Northern California.
And this is a fact that was proved.
Online at madeformorerealty.com.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Get ready. Here we go.
So today we are talking about taxes. It's coming up to be that time of year. If you're not thinking about them, you should be. And so on the show today, what's more fun? What's more exciting than taxes? Well, on the show we have Jana Reyes, and she's going to be talking to us about tax strategy, specifically what you can do with real estate. Thank you for being on the show today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So real quick, let's just talk real briefly about your background, what company you're with, and what tax strategies you and your company specialize in.
So my name is Jana Reyes, and I'm with Asset Preservation Incorporated. We are a national 1031 exchange qualified intermediary, and we specialize in 1031 exchange, which is a tax strategy. It's a tax deferral strategy for real estate owners that hold real estate for trade, business, or investment.
So real quick, we don't have to get into the weeds. But you emphasize deferred. Why did you do that?
Well, I emphasize that because it is not a tax elimination strategy like some people think. It is tax deferral. So you're just simply kicking the tax can down the road, but it does allow you to grow your wealth, kind of snowball your wealth, because you are, instead of cashing out of real estate, paying the tax, and then having a lot less to reinvest on the back end, you're getting to grow the wealth by deferring that taxation, and so you have more to reinvest in new real estate.
Okay, so you're growing it, essentially tax-free, tax-deferred.
Tax-deferred.
Deferred.
Yes.
We got to make sure that's clear. What type of costs, or how does the process work? Is it complicated, or is it pretty simple to do a 1031?
It depends on who you ask. I feel like it can be very simplistic if the taxpayer is clear on what the rules are, because there are some very clear guidelines set forth in the tax code in terms of the timelines, in terms of the rules, in terms of what qualifies as like-kind for the like-kind exchange. So it can be pretty simplistic, but it can also get complex if people have a lot of moving parts. And so we do recommend that they call us before they even list the initial property for sale, so that they can get educated on the process and have a high probability of success.
Got it. So who should call you? Is this just for commercial property? Is it residential property?
It's any real estate held for trade, business, or investment.
Okay.
Any real estate. Raw land, mineral rights, a cell tower, could be a commercial building, as you referenced. It could be single-family rental properties, or anything in between.
Got it. And so when they contact you, hopefully, ideally before listing the property, that's because there's timelines. There's some very strict timelines, right?
Very strict timelines, correct, yes. And if you blow the timelines, you blow the exchange, and you're on the hook for the taxes. So
I had a gentleman years ago, maybe 2 years ago now, who came to me and was like, Johnny, I'm doing a reverse 1031 exchange. If somebody blows the timelines initially, can they back into it, or are they stuck?
So if you blow the timelines on a traditional exchange so let me just kind of give you an overview of what those timelines look like. So basically, you list the property for sale, you secure a buyer on the property you're relinquishing. Some people call that the down leg property, some people call it the relinquished property, but that's the property you're exchanging out of. Okay, so you list that property you're exchanging out of, and then before that, once you secure a buyer, you're in contract, then you engage with a qualified intermediary, which is what we are. We draft a set of exchange documents that effectively assign that contract to us, and then we create an account to catch the funds at the point of closing, because if the funds are directed at the taxpayer, then they're realizing the gain and they're going to be on the hook for the taxes.
That's where the intermediary comes in.
That's where the intermediary comes in. Yeah. So basically, we are stepping into that contract, and we are catching the funds and holding them away from that exchanger so that they do not have constructive receipt of the funds during this process. And then we hold those funds until they have identified their replacement properties and tell us who's closing those properties. And that way we can channel those funds to the closer handling the purchase of the replacement properties. But all of this has to happen within a certain timetable. So not only do we have to hold the funds away from them so they don't have constructive receipt, but we also have to make sure that they are reinvesting within the timelines. So you have 180 days after close of escrow of the sale of the property you're relinquishing to reinvest and have that new real estate held title the same way that you held title to what you just relinquished. But of the 180 days, the first 45 is called the identification period. And you get 45 days to unambiguously identify what it is that you're going to purchase.
Yeah.
And then you must purchase something off of the list that's been created by day 45. And so if you fail to buy something off of the list, the exchange is blown. Or you fail to identify anything by day 45, your exchange is blown. Or if you fail to, reinvest the money by day 180, then your exchange is blown. So you have to meet the timelines of the exchange period outlined in the tax code.
Oh my gosh, that sounds super stressful. But that's why we need to talk to you first, right?
Right. Well, some people think it's stressful because they don't plan, right? But
Yep.
people who plan ahead usually have a good probability of success. And what happens in the real world is most of the time, once they list the property they're going to relinquish, then they start looking for replacement property right away. They don't wait for the clock to start ticking on them, right?
Yeah.
So you can start searching for replacement property during the escrow of the sale of the existing property, and that clock doesn't start ticking until you close. So effectively, some exchangers find the replacement property and they literally close within a couple of days of their sale. We call it a simultaneous exchange if they can do it within a couple days of each other.
Okay.
If it takes longer to close the replacement, then it becomes a delayed exchange. And the delayed exchange, you have up to 180 days for the reinvestment. So to go back to your question about a reverse exchange, that's really a different animal, because what that is where you are actually buying the replacement property first and selling the relinquished property second.
Yep.
So it's a complete reversal of the process. Now, in order to do that, it gets a little tricky because the exchanger is not allowed to be on title to what they're selling and to what they're buying at the same time. So if they're buying first, they still own the property they're planning on relinquishing. So in order to buy first, they actually have to use something called an exchange accommodation title holder, an EAT. Okay. And we are that. Yep. EAT.
Okay.
And we are also that. So we're a qualified intermediary, but we're also an exchange accommodation title holder, because what we will do is we will create an entity on behalf of the exchanger. That's the exchange accommodation title holder, that entity. And we're the member of that entity instead of the exchanger.
Okay.
And then they assign the purchase agreement of that replacement property to us. We step in as that EAT and actually buy the property on behalf of the exchanger, because again, they can't be on title to what they're selling, what they're buying at the same time.
Are they typically buying cash or getting a loan?
Well,
or?
good question. Yeah. So it depends. Most of the time, we see exchangers who have a lot of resources and they're using their cash to make that purchase.
Okay.
Because obviously they haven't shaken loose the equity of what they're selling yet, right? So there's no money from that relinquished property yet to use to make that purchase. So they are fronting the money to make that purchase, but they're giving it to us, right? So we're signing a note saying that we're receiving their funds. We're making the purchase on their behalf in an entity we've created, right? And then we're effectively triple net leasing the property back to them so that they have the burdens and benefits of ownership, because we're not in the property management world. We're simply an exchange accommodation title holder in that environment. But they need to make sure that the insurance on that property covers us and them, because we're on title. And now we're holding title to that. And as soon as we close escrow on that purchase for them, that triggers the exchange timeline. And it's the same timeline. You still get 180 days, but instead of 180 days to reinvest in new real estate, you have 180 days to sell your existing real estate. And so when they sell that existing real estate, whether it's one piece of real estate or if it's 10, they need to sell those pieces of real estate within that 180 days, channel the proceeds of those sales through the qualified account, right? And then if it was their money that was used, we're returning their money to them, right, through that qualified account, and then we're deeding the new property to them.
Because now they don't own
by the 180th day, because now they no longer own the relinquished properties. So reverse exchange has a lot more moving parts, but we have a really skilled team at API that works on the reverse exchanges, the parking arrangement team, because it does require a lot of sophistication to make sure that all of that is done according to the tax code and it meets muster. But it is a process that we see more often in the commercial world than in the residential world.
Okay.
Sometimes people will do it with residential because they have very specific needs or inventory is really tight.
Yeah, like this individual, he wanted to buy a house for his daughter, and she didn't want to live in the house that he currently had, that they were currently at. So he had the extra resources, so he bought the replacement property. She moved in and was living there, and then he was going to sell the property he was going to do the reverse for. Got
it. And I'm assuming the daughter then was a legitimate tenant paying market rent so that the property would qualify for exchange. So that does happen, certainly, like where somebody who owns residential real estate and they want to reinvest in residential real estate, and maybe there's a very specific property that they want to own and they haven't listed the existing property yet, and so they will take on a reverse. More often we see it in the commercial world, especially with business owners that are running their business from their piece of real estate. So, for example, if you're a dentist and you're running your practice from a piece of real estate that you own, and maybe your business is thriving and it's outgrown its space, the dentist isn't going to sell that existing building first and then have nowhere to operate from until they find a replacement. Instead, they're going to buy the replacement, move their practice, and then sell the existing property. So more often we see it in that type of environment where they're looking for business continuity, and so they really have no choice but to flip it into a reverse. The other time we see it is when somebody's trying to sell multiple properties and combine the proceeds into one replacement, like one larger replacement. Sometimes it's easier to buy that replacement and then have 180 days to sell all of the existing properties, because if you try to do a traditional exchange, a more like a delayed or a simultaneous, and you're selling multiple properties, the thing to know about that is that timeline, that 180-day clock, it starts ticking at the sale or the close of the first property, not the last. So if you're selling 5 properties and only one of them has closed and the clock's ticking and you're still trying to get the other one sold, that's where a lot of stress can take place. And so in that environment, we'll more often see someone do a reverse so that they have more time to sell the existing properties.
That makes sense.
So it's really all about the logistics on what makes sense, and that's part of why we're there, to educate people, because they bring us their circumstance, and if they bring it to us ahead of time, we can help them structure the deal in a way that they're, again, going to have a high probability of success. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't call us last minute, because we get a lot of that, too.
I'm sure you get a lot of those.
We get a lot of the...
Please fix my problem.
Yes. In fact, I sadly had one the other day, and the gentleman had already closed escrow on his sale, and his realtor actually had given him a card for our company and said to call us, but where the realtor failed him is he did not explain that you needed to open the exchange prior to close of escrow. So he called me and said, I'm ready to set up my 1031. And he said, I closed. And I said, wait a minute, closed? You mean closed? Or are you pending getting ready to close? Because if you're pending ready to close, we can draft the exchange documents and open the account. And he said, no, I closed. Like I'm recorded, done.
Ouch.
Yep. And once you're recorded, there's, you're on the hook for the taxes. So it's super important to make sure that you engage with a qualified intermediary prior to close of escrow of the sale.
So if somebody's listening to this and they think, hey, that sounds interesting, I want to do that, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So they can either go to our website. We have an amazing website, apiexchange.com. We have a lot of resources on there. So if anyone wants to get educated on exchange prior to calling us, they're welcome to do that. There's a lot of resources there. They can call our headquarters, which is 1-800-282-1031.
Perfect.
Yep, 1031 at the end there. They can email me at jana@apiexchange.com. I'm happy to talk to anybody about their prospective exchange or help them last minute. It just has to be prior prior to close of escrow.
Prior to close. So
Yes,
if you heard
prior to
nothing,
close.
if you got nothing else out of it, forget about the days. Make sure you talk to Jana before you
Yes.
receive the funds, before it closes.
Yes, before it closes escrow. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, when we come back, there is so much more to talk about. We're going to be talking about 1031s and specifically other ways that you can, other tools, resources. What would you call it, Jana? The DSTs, REITs, all
So
that.
we're going to talk a little bit about all of the types of properties that qualify for 1031 exchange reinvestment.
Wonderful. Back after this.
Hey, life is all about relationships, right? And the team at Made for More, they understand that. They understand that when it comes to selling your home or purchasing a new home, it can be a very emotional, huge step in your life. It's one of the biggest transactions you will ever make. And so they want to develop that relationship with you. They want to walk with you every step of the process, make sure they are holding your hand, you're understanding everything clearly. And again, they want to develop that trust with you, that strong relationship, so they can help you during this important journey, this important stage in your life, selling your home or purchasing a new home. So here's what you do. Just Google Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty. Read all of their 1,000 plus 5-star Google reviews. Find out for yourself the great relationships they have made with many of our listeners throughout the Sacramento region. So again, just Google Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty and get more for your home.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings. Online at madeformorerealty.com.
So we are back with Jana with Asset Preservation Incorporated. And we were just talking previously before the break about like the number one thing that you commonly see being people coming to you after the property closes. Like, hey, I can't help you. It's already closed, right?
Yeah.
But you said there's one other thing on the break. You were sharing there's one other thing where it's like, oh my gosh, I wish people knew this before they before they began the process.
Yeah. So sometimes we get calls after the fact, and it's hard to help someone if they probably should have done some more preparation before exchanging, and that is determining who the tax owner of the property is.
Which sounds simple.
It sounds simple,
Yeah.
but we see a lot of issues in this environment because, this is a tax strategy. So it's paramount to determine who is the tax owner on the property that's getting ready to be relinquished, because it's not an exchange if it's one tax owner selling and a different tax owner ends up buying the replacement property. That's not an exchange, right? So we want to drill down and figure out who is the tax owner of this property, because that is the exchanger. And so if, for example, the wife owns a property sole and separate from her husband, then she is the tax owner on title to this property. And so she's the exchanger. So she would be selling the relinquished property and she would then be buying the replacement property. Or if the tax owner is an LLC, a regarded LLC that's filing its own tax return, it's issuing a K-1 to the members of that LLC, then that LLC is actually the owner, the tax owner of the property. And so the LLC is the one selling, the LLC is the one buying. And so it's really important to be consistent. And what will happen sometimes is people will not realize how critical that piece is. And so they will already be in contract on their sale and they'll be in contract on a replacement. And then we'll look at the contracts and they won't be consistent on the tax ownership.
Got it.
Or they potentially are a member of a partnership and they have the impression that they can break away from their partner and they can exchange and the partner can exchange separately. But when in fact they're really held together in one partnership and the property is owned by that partnership. So the partnership should be selling and the partnership should be buying the replacement property.
So if everybody's in agreement, it's fine, right? If everybody that owns the property is in agreement on what's happening, that's fine. But it's where like, oh no, I want to go do something a little bit different or I want to add somebody on. That's where it starts getting
Okay. Messy. And so
it's like a kid. You can't split up the kid.
Right. Without some good tax or legal guidance, right?
Okay.
And so that's where preparation is key, because if people are partners and they do intend to separate and they want to go their separate ways, either a marital separation, a divorce, or partnership separation, there are ways of unwinding these things, but it's, you don't want to try to unwind those things during the process of a 1031 exchange. Yeah. All of these things take preparation. situation, and they should be meeting their tax and legal advisors well in advance of considering an exchange, because if they do want to separate, they need to be able to season this property in a new tax format well before they do a 1031 exchange. And so at API, we don't give tax or legal advice. That's not our role. Our role is to be the qualified intermediary accommodating the exchange itself. But when we see the red flags, we'll certainly encourage them to go and talk to their tax and legal advisors so that they can get the proper guidance and plan ahead for a successful exchange.
Got it. So thing one, make sure that you don't close before talking to Asset Preservation Incorporated.
Correct.
And then the second thing is make sure that you contact them early in the process. Earlier the better.
Yes.
So that way they know who the owner is and they can advise you on what your options are.
Right. And if you're the realtor helping somebody shop for a replacement property, make sure you look at the tax ownership of what they're getting ready to sell and know that it's a critical piece of the exchange to keep that consistent. So whoever the tax owner is on the sale needs to be the tax owner on the purchase in order for it to be an exchange.
Well, that right there would have been a phenomenal show. Just those two things. But there's more. So I was unaware about 1031 tax deferred strategy. But I was unaware that there are other options within that tax deferral strategy. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trusts, are technically a 1031 exchange.
So they are a replacement option that qualifies for 1031 exchange.
Got it.
Yep. So exactly. So what a DST or a Delaware Statutory Trust is, that is fractional ownership in institutional quality real estate. So the investors are fractional owners within that trust format, and the trust is holding a piece of real estate or sometimes multiple pieces of real estate. And the reason that we see people doing that, and I would say they are growing in popularity, and I would say that the reason that is the case is that there are a lot of aging investors out there that have real estate in their portfolios. Yep. I would say, a good portion of the investment real estate are in the hands of the baby boomers, right? They've retired. Yes, trillions. They've retired from their day jobs, right? And now they're looking at trying to retire from their property management or landlording jobs as well. And so they're kind of looking for exit plans. So, as a result, there are some passive real estate options that do qualify for 1031 exchange so that those aging investors can still take advantage of tax deferral through 1031, but instead of reinvesting in yet another property that they'll have to actively manage, they can look at either semi-passive investments or fully passive investments. So a semi-passive investment might be an example of maybe buying an office building with a triple net lease so that maybe they still have liability, right? And some involvement and potentially some cash injections going forward, but there's some separation because the tenants are responsible for the bulk of the expenses. So that's a semi-passive kind of position in real estate that would qualify for 1031 exchange.
Way more passive than dealing with vacancies.
More passive than, yes, if you're, throwing the hammer at the place and you're paying for all the repairs and managing all the tenants, right? So that's kind of the next step, that's semi-passive. But if somebody wants to go fully passive, then a Delaware Statutory Trust is a fully passive option for 1031 exchangers. And then there's also something called the 721 upREIT, which does also qualify for 1031 exchange. So both of them are completely passive. There's no managerial responsibilities, but you're also relinquishing control, right? Yeah. Because if you are actively managing real estate, then you have control over that real estate. You can decide when it's sold. You can go over and switch it up. You're choosing the tenants, every time it's turned over. And so there's control, but then there's also responsibility. Whereas in going into a Delaware Statutory Trust or a 721 upREIT, you're relinquishing control. You don't get to decide when those assets are sold or how they're managed. You're completely passive, but then there's also no cash calls. There's no injections of more money, right? Or capital calls, as some people say. And then there's also no managerial responsibilities whatsoever. So we do see a lot of aging investors going that route.
So if somebody was thinking about, hey, I want a 1031 and maybe put it into a DST or 721 upREIT, we've talked multiple times about the tax, how it's the tax deferral strategy. How does somebody exit this? What's the end game in all this?
Yeah. Okay. So let me kind of give you paint the picture a little bit more. So say I'm an aging investor and I have a duplex, right, in Sacramento, and I am tired of the tenants, the toilets, the drama, whatever, right? I want to go on a cruise and not get a phone call that a toilet's backed up, right?
Exactly.
And so I'm looking to kind of exit from that, but if I just cash out of my duplex, then I'm on the hook for the capital gains tax and the depreciation recapture tax, right? The alternative would be to do a 1031 exchange. So you would engage with us at API, we'd set up that exchange. And then if you're thinking, okay, I don't want to reinvest in something that's got managerial responsibilities, then the exchanger would go sit down with a financial advisor that has access to Delaware Statutory Trust and 721 UPREIT, because you do have to go with or meet with a securities license, FINRA regulated, individual, what they call a registered representative, that has access to these type of replacement properties. Because API, we don't sell any of these things. We're product agnostic. We don't care what the exchangers reinvest in.
Intermediary.
Okay? We're an intermediary. That's our job. We're just the third party holding the funds in between and drafting the documents and kind of watching the timelines. But if someone wants to go the route of securitized real estate, they do need to engage with the proper people to get access to those types of investments. And they need to do their own research on who those parties are and what their track records are and all of that. That's not our role. We don't advise on reinvestment. We don't give an opinion about what's a good investment. That's really between the exchanger and whomever they're using, either a realtor, a commercial broker, or a financial advisor, right, to figure out what to reinvest in.
Let's say they bought that duplex, right? And now they're saying, hey, should I 1031 it into another duplex? Should I put it when does the deferral stop?
Okay.
Yeah.
So when does the deferral stop? So depending on which avenue you're taking, right? So one avenue might be if you go the route of the Delaware Statutory Trust, at some point that Delaware Statutory Trust, that property in that trust will be sold, okay, because those have a shelf life to them. So those investors will be told at the point of investment, we intend, this is the sponsor company talking, we intend to hold this piece of real estate in this trust for 5 to 8 years, for example. And then whenever it is a good point of sale, they'll be contacting all those investors and saying, we are selling this asset. Are you going to set up another exchange to defer again?
Yep, keep it going.
Or are you going to cash out? Let us know what your plan is, right? And so we call those full cycle events where the DST is coming full cycle, it's being sold, and then the investor gets to decide, are they deferring again or are they cashing out? So they have an option, right, at that full cycle event. Now, if the DST is going the route of a 721 UPREIT, that's a different story, okay? That is where the DST, initially, that exchanger goes from their duplex through the exchange into a DST, but that DST has a different exit plan. That DST is actually the asset is going to be pulled into a REIT through the 721 tax code, which is also a tax deferral strategy. And that means that investor goes from being a fractional owner in that Delaware Statutory Trust, and now they get converted into an operating unit holder within a greater REIT.
Got it.
And so then they are liquid effectively. However, when they access those shares, they're probably going to be realizing some taxation, so they want to talk to their tax advisor about what the implications of that would be.
Yep.
But that person can never exchange again because now they are holding operating units in a REIT, and that's not an exchangeable asset. So that's a different type of investment. Now, the question that you asked was, when does the deferral stop? Well, in our world, we say swap till you drop. Okay? Exchange, 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 die, right? Defer, 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 die. And right? I know, it's a high price to pay. Death, right? But it is really a strategy because a lot of investors are focused on that step up in basis that gets achieved at the date of death, so that their heirs are receiving those assets at the date of death valuation. And so that is really, so if you work it right, the deferral can, make it all the way till the point of death, and then it's, that tax slate is like wiped clean, right?
So if somebody passes and they're in a DST, the heirs then
they still get the step up in basis because it's still real estate, right? It's just you're owning fractional ownership in a large piece of real estate instead of something that maybe you wholly own, right?
So it's 100 people owning a property valued at $100 million, right? Mm-hmm. So you didn't have to put, qualify for the full 100 million. You just put your million in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're part owner, right? Not shareholder like a traditional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Got it. So the strategy is, what was it? Till you drop?
Swap till you drop.
Swap till you drop. And then that way your heirs don't have the burden of the deferred taxes. But if at some point you need access to those funds, then you're going to be taxed on them.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, this was a nutrient-dense show. Thank you so much for being on today. If anybody wants to reach out to you again, it's apiexchange.com.
You got it.
That's the website. What are some other ways?
You can also call our headquarters office, which is in Roseville, California, at 1-800-282-1031.
1031, love it.
Yep. Or send me an email at Jana, Jana, at apiexchange.com.
Wonderful. And you guys cover all 50?
All 50 states. So we are a national qualified intermediary. So our headquarters happens to be in Roseville, California. We're a 35-year-old business. So we're one of the oldest exchange companies in the nation. Wow. But we also have a hub in the East Coast on Long Island in New York. And then we have many satellites about the country of reps that are kind of out in the field teaching on 1031 exchange. So if anyone has an organization that they're looking at having a speaker, we do a lot of public speaking on, to groups of CPAs, tax attorneys, real estate firms, commercial brokerages, just really trying to get the word out on how to use this tax strategy, how people can build their wealth in real estate, leveraging this tax deferral.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Look forward to having you back soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, life is complicated, right? That's why our good friend Johnny Jennings wants to make things easy, simple when it comes to selling your home. Listen to this. He's going to give you at least 3 cash offers on your home in as-is condition, which means no staging, open houses, organizing, no costly repairs. Just again, 3 cash offers on your home in as-is condition. It's simple, it's easy, it's quick. All you got to do is Google Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty. Again, Google Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty and get more for your home.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings online at madeformorerealty.com.
Well, that was interesting having Jana on.
Absolutely, just a wealth of information.
She talks so fast. There was so much information there.
Yeah.
So I hope people go to apiexchange.com, get some information. Tax deferral. Nobody likes paying more than they have to in taxes.
Absolutely not.
Give to Caesar what's Caesar's, but if you don't have to, it's not his.
Or move to Puerto Rico. What is it? Where's Brent Gove live?
Puerto Rico. Yeah, drop that federal tax burden down. I think it's like 4%-ish. But talking about real estate, though, I'm hearing a lot of questions. People are always asking me, well, what if my buyer backs out? What if I'm in contract? So there's two ways to look at this. One is the buyer. What if I'm in contract and I don't like the house? What do I do? Conversely, the seller is like, what if the buyer backs out? What do I do as now the seller? So let's just take that first one. So as the buyer, if you're purchasing a home, at least in California, you have so much protection, especially if your agent has filled out the forms correctly. Which you'd be
That's key.
Which is key. It sounds easy.
You had a lot of protection, but unfortunately, I forgot to sign line D, and you're out of luck.
They didn't check the box. They checked the wrong box.
Shoot.
Right? But as long as you have your contingencies in place, typically you can, back
How long
out.
do you have? Can you back out all the way until the last second before you finally sign that last piece of paper?
So there's contingencies and they have timelines and it's all identified. But what a lot of people don't realize is that so the contingencies are designed so the buyer can do their investigations on the property.
Right.
Every sale's as is. I get that. In case you don't know that, every sale isn't as a sale, but the buyer has the right to investigate the property and see, do I want to move forward with this sale? And when they do that, there's typically an appraisal contingency, a loan contingency, a home like an inspection contingency. And also, the buyer has the opportunity to review the seller disclosures. So included in those seller disclosures is the agent visual inspection. So that's something that the listing agent, the person helping sell the house, has to complete. And there's the actual seller disclosures. There's so many pages of it. Regardless of if you've listed your contingencies, most people don't know this, regardless of if you've listed that home inspection contingency, that loan inspection contingency in writing, and you still have not received the seller disclosures, you have 5 days to review it. So if you can, and then you can back out based off something on those disclosures. So it's really important, if you're the seller, for you to complete those disclosures, for your agent to complete their agent visual inspection disclosure and get that to the buyer as quickly as possible once escrow is opened, because they have 5 days to review it. If they don't, and you lag and you forget, or you think you're too busy moving, you're too busy finding that replacement property, like life gets away from you, and you're like, oh, I forgot to do that, and you complete them and send them in, technically, the buyer could back out. They have 5 days to review that, and they could back out if they wanted to.
Okay.
So that's the little trick right there for buyers, right? Now, if you're a seller, you're kind of locked in that agreement. You can't cancel the agreement. Only the buyer can really cancel the agreement.
Really?
So
Interesting.
You can make it painful if they're not hitting certain milestones, right?
You can call up my cousin Vinny.
You can call up the cousin Vinny. He'll show up with his Lincoln, black Lincoln, and a baseball bat. But you're really locked in. So if another offer comes in that's better, and you've already accepted in writing, and you're
sure, absolutely, that makes sense.
It does make sense, but you are locked in. But let's say the seller, they want to sell the home to this buyer, and the buyer backs out. Well, now what?
What are the top reasons why people are backing out in the current climate we're in?
The number one reason you see is inspections.
The inspections. So when they put in an offer to the home, there have been no inspections done by the homeowner, correct?
Sometimes,
but not full home inspections. And so once they get those reports, they notice, I didn't see that there was an issue with the plumbing or the foundation or something like that. Bigger issues that are not an easy fix.
Or that the seller didn't even know about. So for example, we're selling my grandparents' house in Salinas, and my grandpa took immaculate, like that house was in pristine condition. He had somebody come out every single month to spray for bugs even, and they found termites, right? And in the subflooring, there's a little leak in the subflooring. There's no way my grandpa knew that leak was there. If it did, it would have been fixed. But there's always surprises for both the buyer and sometimes the seller, right? In terms of those inspections. So the number one reason why people are backing out is because of those inspections. That's why we recommend you get the inspections as the homeowner done before you even go on the market. So that way I, as your listing agent, can say, hey, here, prospective buyer, here are all the inspections. Here, buyer's agent, here are all the inspections. So you can make an educated decision. The last thing you want to do is go on the market, accept an offer. Then we're required to change the status in the MLS so it shows it's pending. And then everybody moves on. And then if that buyer does back out, we have to change it back to active. And the number one question I get is, Johnny, what's wrong with the house? Why didn't it sell? There could be nothing wrong with the house, but unfortunately the buyer decided to back out. So the number one reason is based off those inspections. And the number two reason, I would say, it's not something you can really track, but I would say unethical agents are submitting multiple offers on properties. Like if they're buyers in a desperate situation.
That makes sense.
And then they're hoping like they're good with these three houses.
Sure.
And then...
But they've obviously got their favorite.
They have their favorite. And what if their favorite gets,
So they put in multiple offers. It gets accepted by the first offer, which they're excited about. But then, oh my goodness, their favorite house accepted the offer. And so they want to back out on the other one, right?
Here's a true story. So this was not a... Or the seller takes too long to respond. So for example, we had a house... one of our agents had it listed in Rockland. Valerie's representing the buyers. They made an offer on the house on Friday, first day on the market. Valerie's quick. She knows speed is key to getting a good deal for her buyers. So they showed up the day it hit the market and came on the market, and they wrote an offer. Full price, let's do this. The seller said, well, it's the first day on the market. Let's wait through the weekend. Let's see what happens. we'll get back to you Monday or Tuesday. We're telling, because this is our agent that we're coaching along with the listing side. We're like, hey, if you do that, you might lose this buyer, right? They might lose this opportunity. Are they okay with that? Mm-hmm. And they were like, yeah, we're fine with that. They thought it would be an easy sell. Well, on Sunday, they found a house. These same buyers found a house that they really liked. And so they withdrew their offer on the house that they put an offer in on Friday, and they submitted an offer on a replacement property in Lincoln. Now that house is still sitting on the market. It never changed. We were never in contract, right? But they wouldn't have been looking at other houses. They wouldn't even
right
if the seller would have accepted their offer.
Right.
So if the right offer comes in, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. Accept the offer, right? Like don't think that you're going to get an extra $5,000
right
in today's economy. That's really rough.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're seeing in terms of the buyer side and the seller side. But it is a kiss of death. So you want to make sure that all the disclosures are done. You want to make sure that you have as many inspection reports to give these people as possible before you accept an offer, so that way there's no surprises mid-escrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
So,
then you're starting over,
starting
right?
over from square one, or you're starting from,
Worse
negative
than that.
one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's like, well, what's wrong with the property? There is typically a haircut that seller is going to have to take if the house goes back on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. So get the inspections done right ahead of time.
Yep.
Right. Make sure they're disclosed, and when the offers come in, they have all the information, and then make sure you're vetting the buyer. Make sure they have their financing already set up right before you accept the offer. Because then you're sitting around, you're waiting, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then when we come back, so that's what's happening if the buyer backs out of your house, right? That's ways to avoid it. There's things you can do. If you do have to go back on the market, there's some marketing strategies that we'll touch on back after this.
Oh, life is complicated, right? That's why our good friend Johnny Jennings wants to make things easy, simple when it comes to selling your home. Listen to this. He's going to give you at least 3 cash offers on your home in as-is condition, which means no staging, open houses, organizing, no costly repairs. Just again, 3 cash offers on your home in as-is condition. It's simple, it's easy, it's quick. All you got to do is Google Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty. Again, Google Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty and get more for your home.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings online at madeformorerealty.com.
So buyers are backing out in record numbers right now.
In record numbers?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, people are just so nervous. They're so nervous.
What are they nervous about?
Well,
if they're in it and they're putting in offers, what all of a sudden happens? I know we talked about, inspections and all of that, but is it something else that they're nervous about?
I think just overall sentiment is this a good decision? Is this the right time to buy? And so if a home seller is like, hey, let's price it a little high. I know what you're saying, Johnny, is it should be here, but let's try a little high and see what goes. Let's see if we can get some offers there first. Because they don't want to, air quotes, leave any money on the table.
Right.
Horrible idea. We've talked about that before. But you got to think like a buyer right now. What are they hearing? They're hearing prices are softening. They're hearing interest rates may be coming down.
Right.
So in order to get them from, hey, I'm interested in buying a house, to actually pulling the trigger, going through escrow, making the move, putting money down, your house has to be compelling enough for them to go through all that and potentially risk your house now being, their new house now being worth less than when they paid for it, when they bought it. So I think that's a lot of the nervousness around. They know long term it'll be fine, but it still stinks when you close on a house on a Monday or in October, and then in October a year later it's worth less. Right. That Zestimate, that almighty Zestimate is below what you paid for. That stings. And so in order to get people off the fence, you really have to price these homes correctly.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But that leads us into, why isn't my house selling? I get that question a lot. People because they see the billboards, they hear us on the radio, whether it's on the show or on the other stations that we advertise on,
right?
Or whether they see the YouTube videos or we have a very large presence in the market, and so people call me all the time that are listed. I am not actively seeking these people, just to be clear. I am not actively seeking them. Or maybe they interviewed with me before And so they kind of know they kind of know me, and they've tried the cheaper option, and they're like, hey, I don't want to deal with the cheaper option. I want to go with Johnny.
Right.
And so they're coming back. And so, for example, there was a property in El Dorado Hills. Beautiful home. Probably worth $1.4 million. Mm-hmm. The guy wanted 1.5, 1.6. I told him, there's no way you're getting this for this house. So he ended up going with somebody who said that they could get it for him.
Right.
And then they start adjusting the price down. And classic realtor, right? Classic realtor move.
Classic.
And he calls me up and he says, hey, Johnny, I'm wanting to know what you can do better for me. Like, I'm thinking I might switch to you. What can you do better? And I go, well, let's pull up the listing. I looked at the listing. It was stunning. The agent had done a phenomenal job. Maybe priced it a little too aggressively, or a little too optimistically. But other than that, the photos were great. He paid to have it staged. When I was in the house before, there were things that needed to get fixed. The photos looked like those had been fixed. And so I told the guy, your agent's doing a phenomenal job for you. Like, stay with your agent. Like, he's not, like, stay with this guy. He hasn't done anything wrong. What you need to do is you need to adjust your price. So because I wasn't involved, like, I just told him, hey, you're way overpriced. You need to adjust the price. I told you this before. And he didn't like that.
Sure.
But I don't care. He's not paying me.
Right.
Like, I'm giving him free advice right now. Right. And it just makes me mad. So hopefully if somebody else sees one of my listings, they'll be like, hey, stick with Johnny, just adjust the price. And that is if you are only being told what you want to hear, then maybe you don't have the right people around you.
Yeah.
And so don't be going to your friends. Don't be going, like, when's the last time your friend sold a house? Right? Or your neighbor. When's the last time you've lived next to him for 15 years? He hasn't sold a house in 15 years. Right? Why are you going to them and getting their opinion based off what they've heard on the news or what they read in some article instead of listening to the professional that you hired?
Yeah.
Like, if you didn't trust that person, then you should fire them.
Right.
But if you do trust them, then listen to what they're suggesting. Had a conversation this morning. This agent or this client, she's wanting to sell the house, and we've had zero activity on the home. I've told her it's overpriced. Mm-hmm. Prices are trending down. We're trying to catch a falling knife, so we need to get ahead of that. She's just nervous, understandably so. But again, if your house isn't selling, my suggestion is there's a number of things. What were we going to say? I'm
going to ask your advice on. Do you have one more thing, and then I'm going to ask your advice on someone who's trying to sell their property and it's not selling.
Yeah. So we'll just go into that.
Okay. So they live in Texas, and I know what you're going to say. Well, there's your problem right there. But they own 20 acres in Texas, and there is a small house on the property. I think it's somewhere around 1,100 square feet or something like that. It's very small, 2 bedrooms, nice house. It's got two garages, two car garages. Again, 20 acres. They have animals on the property, but they want to move into town closer to school and work, etc.
Yeah.
So they're done with that lifestyle. But they priced it somewhere around $410, I want to say. Which to me, I thought that was a bad idea, because then aren't you pricing out everyone else who has a maximum, who's searching up to 400,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought that was a mistake, but I'm not sure.
You know why they did that? I can tell you why they did that. So this is probably the seller steering the conversation, but they said, hey, let's price it at $410. We're really willing to take $400, but then that way we have a built-in buffer.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought too. But I thought, well, then, but you're also eliminating all those people who are searching for a property under 400,000.
Horrible idea.
Yeah. And so now they're back. Now they're down to $399.99.
Yeah.
But I think it's been on the market for around 45 to 50 days.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know if that's a long time, especially for a property in Texas that's 2 hours outside of Dallas, and it's got 20 acres. But what are your thoughts? Is that really a long time for a property like that to be on the market, or what's your?
So as far as Texas, I can't speak to Texas, but I don't care if you're in Ione. I don't care if you're in Colfax. I don't care if you're in Roseville. If you price the home correctly, they're selling faster than 45 days.
Okay.
Like, it could be a weird house, but if you price it correctly, it's going to sell. Like, the amount of exposure a home gets with just your basic realtor marketing package, like, the 3 Ps, put on the MLS and it goes on realtor.com, and just that basic stuff is incredible compared to 20 years ago.
Right.
Like there's people have the apps on their phones. They're getting a notification from Zillow the moment your house comes on the market.
Right.
Right. And then they're going to look at it. They're going to look at the photos, and they're going to make a snap decision.
Right.
And so, if you priced it correctly, the houses are moving.
So that's the first big mistake. Obviously, they priced it.
So
poorly.
yeah, so you want to price it correctly out the gate, because then it creates that scarcity mindset where, oh my gosh, look at all these views, look at all these saves. It's only been on the market, 2 days. We need to go see this before it's gone.
Right.
Whereas now it's like, hey, it's been on the market 45 days.
Something's wrong with it.
We'll go after the soccer game next Saturday.
Yeah.
It's not. It may not even
no
be right
rush.
for us. Yeah.
Right.
There's no sense of urgency.
Something's got to be wrong with it if it's been on there that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did everybody else that's looked at it 3,000 times on Zillow not pull the trigger? And so, pricing it correctly out of the gate, you cannot undervalue that. And then, but let's say you
cannot overvalue that.
It's very
it's
valuable.
very important.
It's very important. So let's say. You say, well, that doesn't help me at all, Johnny. My house has been on the market. Like I had a call with a gentleman last night. I'm telling you, these calls come in all the time. A gentleman called me last night and was like, hey, I want a cash offer on my house. I'm like, well, what are you wanting to do? And he said, well, I need to sell my house so I can buy this replacement property I'm already in contract for. And I said, well, dude, your realtor's doing a phenomenal job. Like, look at the photos, look at the 3D tour. Are you happy with your realtor? Yes. Is he responsive? Is he communicative? Yes. Then stick with your realtor. Like, it comes, like, there's so many, we're running out of time here, but there's so many other things you can do before firing your realtor. Like, just make sure that the realtor is communicative, that they're following up with the showings, that they are actually have a marketing budget. They're not just putting it on realtor, that when the phone answers, your realtor has the bandwidth or staff to answer the phone, because you can't afford to miss those phone calls.
Right.
There's some things that you can do that help. And let's say that listing's stale, you can get new photos taken. That's not that expensive. You can rework the listing description. You can you have options, but at the end of the day, you can run the gambit. But if the house is not priced correctly, you wouldn't buy that house. The house is
right.
You wouldn't buy a house that's overpriced. Why should you expect your buyer to do the same?
Right.
So if you have any questions, if you want to reach out, if you're not on the market and would like to go on the market, go to madeformorerealty.com. We'd love to have an honest conversation with you about how we sell houses faster and for more money. That's madeformorerealty.com.